A lot like severe caffeine addiction, 3D video game environments are something I've never quite been able to fully get over. Despite now being older, wiser, and numb to almost every other emotion, the magic and wonder of exploring games is at least still very much as there as it was during my first interaction with them, which is apparently unusual. Because although it's true everyone plays games differently, it wasn't until being screamed at an hour into Max Payne because I hadn't got out the starting area that I realised I play them the wrong way. A weird, twisted, messed up way that involves not so much exploring as just looking around while mentally stripping back and ignoring all of the context and gameplay to leave an entirely different atmosphere created solely from the environment itself. That's regardless of whether or not the elements that contribute to that are intentional, unintentional, good design choices, or bad. Before I say anything else though, I really want to just be clear when I also say this isn't me being all because of my superior intellect. Because honestly, if anything, it's the opposite, since the way I play games involves dumbing down and just zoning out all of the context and gameplay that's supposed to prevent me from interpreting them in the way I do. And let's just say that takes a very special kind of person, the same kind of person that would also play games in Japanese just for the aesthetic of the characters. Which, don't worry, I'm not sad enough to go that far. A way that when I'm made aware of it, really loudly, an hour into Max Payne, I realise is actually really bizarre and interesting enough to cover here, because the one huge upside of this horrific deformity is that even the worst, most irredeemably bad game can actually be an undiscovered, surreal, atmospheric masterpiece. Because, like I've said, when environment design is good, it's good, and when it's bad, it's still pretty good, especially in above every type though, this always applies most to the urban cityscape. Because when it comes to deserted wastelands, for example, not that I've been to many apart from Swindon, yep, that's pretty much, I'd say you nailed it, right there. Done. But with cities and urban environments, because there's a lot more moving parts and details involved in emulating them, there's a lot more that could potentially go wrong, therefore there are more examples of them going wrong. More so than with deserts, jungles, or literal hellscapes, for example. Despite this insane obsession though, what's kept me from just laying it all out sooner is the fact that the point I'm making ultimately boils down to, you couldn't do it, so why did you try? And you know, if you start teaching that in schools, I can't imagine you'd get many rocket scientists. But also because of how hard it seems to be for people to relate, which is definitely due to a misunderstanding and not because they're sick of hearing me go on about it all the time. So I made this. So that I hopefully actually make sense when I start talking about more subtle examples though, I've decided to begin this with the most extreme, insane, far out game I could possibly think to apply this to. Then found one even dumber than that. Power Rangers Dino Thunder on GameCube is a low-budget kids game based on an also low-budget TV show that consists in large part of repurposed footage from an entirely different, better Japanese TV show. A game that also thought it could do an open-world sprawling city level. And it couldn't. So why did it try? I thought it was a good place to start because of the contrast between what I'm pointing out and the obstacle of there quite clearly being a fucking giant bright red robot T-Rex in the center of the screen. So if it'll help, I'll just smash in a little blur. There we go. Level 3 in Power Rangers Dino Thunder is, like I've been casually hinting at, a city that creeps me out when I look way too deeply into everything. Things like the unnervingly gigantic sun, the city being in constant perpetual twilight and positioned in the middle of nowhere, surrounded on all sides by a seemingly infinitely stretching mountainscape, there being this one tanker that just constantly circles really slowly because, or despite the only exit being this one bridge for everything, that being you, any cars, or the boat, or even just the streets themselves being completely devoid of pedestrians. Again, I feel like I've been more than clear in saying I'm definitely the weird one here, and I'm not for a second implying that anyone else should pick up on this stuff, but the point's still there that you know, if you want to, there's now a reason to play Power Rangers Dino Thunder, I guess. I'm not dumb enough to actually think that this is anything other than a level created to the best of their ability and to their technical and time constraints, though no doubt while thinking who'd be pathetic enough to look that deeply into it. Well, hi, my name's Jay, but at the same time though, you'll never actually know when there is a deliberate attempt at bringing the tone down. I mean, obviously not alongside the robot T-Rex, but you know what I mean. Because I guess in a way you could look at this as being a good point in support of how you personally interpret games being more important than how they were intended to be during development. Maybe? Am I an idiot? Yeah. What? Which is why I normally tend to avoid bringing up horror or even just dark-themed games, because to point something like broken windows or ambient wind noises out usually conjures the response, "Congratulations, Jay, you've discovered the point." In other words, although aspects like that may contribute to an atmosphere, it's not as fun or interesting if it's intentional, but at the same time though, I often have a hard time telling, to be honest, so sometimes you can only really just enjoy it regardless. Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness is a dark-themed game, but from a development team within a studio way too talented and more than experienced in creating ancient, abandoned, atmospheric, eerie tomb levels. Except here they were tasked with creating semi-open world urban levels, which, on top of the fact that the game as a whole was famously rushed and let's just say not very polished in general, equal words that are basically heroin to me. So what you end up with is that. It's really something else. And I love it. The effect this had on the environment is surreal. Firstly, you have the fact that the engine only allows for as much breathing room as the actual Paris. Then you have the reoccurring classic of there being literally no entrance or exit anywhere. I mean, that's just from Silent Hill there. There's only 3 people at opposite ends of the level, none of which act or react to anything, at least initially. The general derelict state, the design itself being bad, having this weird walled-off park with underground station access taking up half of it. The broken windows and wind ambience make this another spot-on example of exactly what I'm trying to say, except I do get that even if this was unintentional, here it wouldn't matter because it's Tomb Raider and the angsty, edgy reboot one on top of that. As much as I'm trying to justify my perspective and hopefully get some people to relate, when it comes to this, it's way too easy to just give or take credit, to go, yeah, I meant to do that. That was me. So what I actually really need, and what I feel always works best, is a game where the developers had every incentive to keep even the slightest hint at any strange, eerie, ulterior subtext out of their game. One where a major tonal shift would absolutely matter and most likely result in some kind of QA testing failure before release. So here's a game I literally got from a cereal box as a kid. Disney's Extremely Goofy Skateboarding is a skateboarding game released in 1995 to tie in with the movie Bad Boys 2. And you know what? It's pretty boring, but it has that Disney polish, I guess. Its levels, though, as well as being generally weird, I mean, I still have no idea what this place even is. It says mines, but there's quite clearly a spaceship, also no mines. And it's purple. Feature a city at night that is also a perfect example of this. Basically, in short, the point I want to use this game to make is that with a Disney game, it almost definitely had a team employed not to let any spooky vibes get past. At least here in Disney's Extremely Goofy Skateboarding anyway, so any that are here are almost definitely unintentional, because despite that, what a surprise, this level always creeps me out. Wow. Firstly, you have the fact that like every level so far, it's completely devoid of people. Anyone, which was fine when they were skate parks and building sites, but being a city, it's not normal. There's even a word for the feeling it gives off, Canopsia, like a place that should be bustling with people, but isn't. Then you have the fact that the constantly changing traffic lights draw attention to the emptiness, that unnervingly huge blood moon, and like always there being no clear exit apart from maybe this tunnel that visibly stretches back for miles. But the biggest by far in any game I have ever played is in the audio department, because yeah, I've also always been one to mess with in-game audio mixing as well. Jesus, all the weird psycho habits are coming out in this. Either to pay more attention to a soundtrack or a level's soundscape, I'll just, if only for a couple of seconds, mute one of the sliders. Nothing I haven't done already in every game I've ever played, so I wasn't really expecting anything different, to be honest. So imagine my surprise hearing this. It's an odd choice, I'll leave it at that, but I think it helps make the point that in the context of Goofy's wacky antics, it's nothing, but in ignoring the context, this and every other game can essentially turn into one of those surreal exploration games you find on the deep web made by serial killers. I mean, that you can apparently find on the deep web, I wouldn't know, so. With the extreme being taking the jankiest, most technically limited game possible, like Spider-Man 2 on the Game Boy Advance, a game that both shouldn't be possible while at the same time being understandably possible when you see the mess it's in, and just going, imagine existing here, a place where the buildings are clearly just empty, textured, out-of-scale pillars, where the frame rate never exceeds 2 and you can't move without the ground distorting underneath you. Obviously, there's a lot less going on, but that kind of helps you to see how you can apply it to bigger, deeper worlds, which brings me full circle to the game that started it all. It's being the realization that not everyone thinks like me and that I might just be weird. Any Rockstar game, but especially GTA and especially GTA 3 is somewhat of a holy grail of this kind of thing for me, both because of the sheer number and intensity of the things there are to point to. So to mention absolutely everything properly would be impossible, or at the very least require its own entire video that I know I'm going to end up making already, even if I didn't want to, just because I'm obsessed and can't shut up. Yeah, it's true that there are jokes and that the game doesn't exactly take itself very seriously, but to me at least, the word atmosphere has always meant what's there when the game shuts up, which in the end is where I think I've been failing to make this point in the past. But still, is it actually really that important? No. Because I get that in general it doesn't really matter and that I can't and shouldn't force anyone to play games the way I do, it's just that for some reason it's become really important to me to 1. Be understood, and 2. Be told that I'm not at least completely insane. Also, to repeat myself again though, I think it's a unique enough perspective that talking about specific examples makes for an interesting video, if nothing else. Because ultimately, when that's all been said, the worst case scenario is I've either just been doing a really bad job of explaining myself, or I've made myself look like even more of a psychopath. Either way, I guess I'm about to find out. Yay. I want neither of those things.